What is the world's most evil company and why? Chiquita Bananas. I'm not sure if they're that evil currently, but they have a really bad history of killing protesting workers, starting wars and supporting terrorist organizations. n.m.wikipedia.org. The term Banana Republic came from their relations with nations like Honduras. Was looking for this. Kinda crazy that the clothing brand Banana Republic became so popular despite this morbid allegiance. And yet my clothing brand fascist empire hasn't really taken off yet. Or my Made for Kids by Kids line. I am a little biased since I just saw Dark Waters but DuPont. Nestle, zmayscience.com. Too many reasons to list. Most fast fashion brands. Child labor, wasting horrible amount of water while polluting it, burning or throwing the unsold clothes into the ocean, etc. I can't help but thinking that all mainstream products in the world are built on top of suffering, and that anything remotely ethical is just extremely expensive and scarce. Nestle is pretty bad, charging African villages for water. The far worse thing that they did was give milk formula to poor African women for free just long enough for them to stop producing milk, and then start charging them for the formula. Tricking them into giving up something they produce naturally and then charging them to save their babies. You forgot the worst part: the water they would use to mix with the formula was very low quality, and as a result of that there were many infant deaths. They also were not providing formula in enough quantity or regularity, so women began to ration it, using less scoops of formula to water ratio and starving their babies. Women couldn't afford the formula and would water it down. They also didn't have access to clean water or methods to sterilize bottles. Nestle knew that. It's hard to know how many kids Nestle killed with their fake nurses and one free can of formula as women left the hospital, but estimates put it at about 1 million. They were happy to sell a few cans to poor women at the outset and didn't care when their babies died from unclean water and malnutrition while their own mother's milk supply dried up. Nestle has a string of scandals and each one is horrifying, and Nestle doesn't care. They recently beat charges of child slavery. Not by arguing they don't use child slaves, mind. But by arguing that their child slaves are in another country and slavery laws don't apply. Duck M. How can you live with yourself if you make these decisions? I mean, Church of Scientology is pretty sketchy. It's probably some little-known company that isn't high profile but is basically pure slavery while supplying the bigger companies that we actually know about. I'd also nominate security contractor companies that supply death squads and death squad training to dictators around the world. What they do is often technically illegal in the countries they're based in, but enforcement just doesn't happen as long as they're assisting governments their home government supports. Blackwater. It's called Academy now. It's actually Constellus Group Triple Canopy now. Wait, wasn't it called Z for a while? Blackwater, Z, Academy, Constellus Triple Canopy. You know they change their name every time someone replies here, right? Correct. They are now called Nestle. Reuters.com. JJ knew for decades that asbestos lurked in its baby powder. Edit. n.wikipedia.org. Dopesick focuses on the epicenter of America's struggle with opioid addiction across the U.S.3 and specifically the drug OxyContin. Good ADP series about On of the Most Evil Company. I checked some of the stuff they did because it was unreal to me. I was just naive. n.wikipedia.org. Company that was owned by the Sackler family. Scrolled this far just to find JJ mentioned. It was unbelievable how long they kept this under wraps despite reports from way earlier regarding how carcinogenic their powder was turning out to be. Especially increasing incidence of ovarian cancer in women. Purdue Pharma. OxyContin is still killing people. But hey, bonuses for selling by the milligram. Evil. Joja ruins small businesses and destroys the sense of community in rural towns. And their cola sucks. Literally trash SMH. Down with Joja Corp. Morris can get Duck too. Duck Pierre also though wish we could run our own shop. Frown. It looks like Concerned Ape's new game Haunted Chocolatier has you run a shop. All the companies who are gobbling up real estate so they can rent the houses out for insane rates while also neglecting their landlord responsibilities. Let's look at what happened with Zillow last week. Bought 6,000 houses by paying too much for them. Amway. Nestlé, literally trying to steal all water and sell it back at a huge profit, along with basically owning slaves. They are just straight up evil. Nike is the largest slave labor company in the world. All while preaching equality. I can't believe I scrolled as long as I did till I saw someone mention Nike. Lots of good examples here. Find it interesting that nobody mentioned McKinsey, which advises most of these firms on their corporate strategy. Here's an essay written by an anonymous former employee of theirs. Currentaffairs.org. Wells Fargo. Wow. Didn't know about this. From Wikipedia, the Wells Fargo account fraud scandal is a controversy brought about by the creation of millions of fraudulent savings and checking accounts on behalf of Wells Fargo clients without their consent. They created a credit account without my consent almost 10 years ago. I called asking about it since it never had a credit card, was told to make an appointment to speak with someone at one of their branches. I never did. Next thing I know, Teresa, new credit card in my mailbox. I've been with a credit union for a long while now, mostly because of politics but partly because of the scam. DuckWF. I love how London Oil and its leadership would literally qualify for the bad guy role in an 80s action movie. Not many people outside of Sweden have heard of them. Shell is about to start blasting the wild coast of South Africa to find oil. It's during whale migration season as well. Every 30 seconds, 24 hours a day for 6 months they will blast sound waves at the ocean floor. The ocean wildlife is going to be destroyed. Meta. Bayer is pure evil. Selling HIV-contaminated drugs until they got busted. Then they just sold it in Africa, hoping the first world wouldn't care. TBH corporations are like politicians, finding a decent one is the exception. Probably not the most evil, but I hate Comcast the most. I just moved over to Google Fiber and had to break up with Comcast. Everything was fine working with the rep during the termination of service. They called me back up 2 days later and the Comcast guy I was talking to asked me why I left. I said I wanted to try Google Fiber for a couple months and he said, "So you hate Comcast?" I said no, I didn't say that. I said I wanted to try out a different service for a couple months and then he made a scoff noise at me and then I said, "We're done here," and hung up. WTF, everything was fine until they called me back and did this. After gaining access to fiber, I recently broke up with Comcast, again, at their store so I could return the equipment as well. The woman who helped me was pleasant enough. She asked me, "May I ask your reason for leaving?" After only the briefest pause she asked, "Competition?" I said yes and we were done. Comcast knows that people only use Comcast if it's their only option. The random pricing and fees is based purely on being a monopoly. I've scrolled so much and hasn't seen anyone mention this, but Chevron. They were found guilty in America and were ordered to pay. The lawyer who represented the victims is currently sitting in jail in the US. Edit, here's an article on it. peoplesworld.org. The British East India Company, a company that literally enslaved an entire subcontinent and killed millions to please their stockholders. If not for these guys, India would not be impoverished as they are today. Fun fact, even though it was essentially disbanded in 1857, it kind of still exists and has a single store in London. Purdue Pharma should be on the list. It would be faster to list the few who aren't evil. A lot of small, community-oriented business aren't. Until they become big, at least. DuPont Chemical. Nestlé. Forget the CEO saying water isn't a right. They own their part of their workforce and have been called out on it repeatedly. There has been article after article written about this. A few years ago, they even released a fancy infographic explaining how they were trying to reduce the use of slave labor. Nestlé chocolate is slave chocolate. If you are put on their fishing boats or cocoa plantations, you're finished. You are a line item on a sheet and worked with no pay or benefits and just enough food to keep you alive. If you break, you are discarded and left to die. If you are on a fishing boat and get hurt or sick, you'll just be tossed overboard in the ocean. Think about this the next time you see the Quick Rabbit or pick up a Nestle Crunch bar.